Now, please do call in, get on the line. We're going to take your calls the whole second half of this hour. But joining us right now at the top of the show, at the top of the hour, Jim Bognet. He's running again for Congress in Pennsylvania's 8th Congressional District. He was a Republican nominee last time. Democrat Matt Cartwright barely squeaked by. But Jim is running again. We had him on a ton last year in the lead up to that election. Jim, thanks for joining us again on Breitbart News Saturday.
Matt, thanks for having me at the beginning of this important election.
Okay, so lots to talk about here. First and foremost, this news that Joe Biden is going to give $450,000 to every illegal alien that was separated, so to speak, by President Trump's border controls, migrant protection protocols efforts. I'm just blown away by it, Jim. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, this is unbelievable. I'm talking to people all around America who are just totally outraged that he would cut $500,000 checks to illegal aliens who broke our laws to try to get into our country illegally.
You know, the liberals are crazy, Matt, but this may be the craziest thing they've ever tried to do. I mean, Biden, Cartwright, Pelosi, we know that they're always on the side of illegal immigrants over the American taxpayer. But here to give $450,000 checks, that's going to be billions down the tubes. You know, they always go against the American taxpayer. But you know what makes this particularly bad? They want to increase our debt, borrow the money from China, take money from China to go to people who are illegally coming into our country. I just think it's reprehensible. I think it's impeachable. I can't believe that all the Democrats would go along with this. There have to be some sane Democrats left who will stand up to Biden and say no, but I'm worried they aren't. You know, I've seen with my opponent, Cartwright, they never stand up to Biden on illegal immigrants.
Yeah, well, that's what's so crazy about this. So Biden actually went there to Scranton, right? Like very recently here, I think last week. And, you know, Matt Cartwright hasn't said a gosh darn word about anything all year. I remember last year in the lead up to the election, we kept saying this guy is going to do whatever Biden tells him to do. He's going to do whatever Nancy Pelosi tells him to do. And lo and behold, Jim, we were right. And Cartwright and his supporters were wrong. That he is not an independent at all. He does what he's told. He falls in line. He doesn't stand up against any of this stuff. And frankly, it's embarrassing for the people of Scranton. The people of Scranton deserve so much better than this insanity.
Well, I've said it so many times, Matt. Cartwright equals Pelosi equals Biden. They all vote in lockstep. Cartwright votes 100% of the time with Pelosi, and whatever Biden and them want, he just salutes. And, you know, that's why in Scranton and Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, we're now being served by a guy who has San Francisco values instead of having Northeast Pennsylvania values. We're anti-illegal immigration here. We're for building the wall. We're pro-life. We're pro-gun. Cartwright's none of those things. He's just a foot soldier lackey. I call him the lapdog. Matt Cartwright is Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden's lapdog. And until we get rid of him, that's what we're going to end up with. But here's the good news. I was up 10,000 votes on election night last time, Matt. Until the crazy no-excuse mail-in ballots came in, it was looking very good for us. We've proven that we can take him out. We're going to take him out. And one other piece of good news, Matt, Joe Biden is at 40% favorability in this district. So he's 40-57 in my district. That is not a margin that leads to a congressman of your same party being reelected. So we are going to send Matt Cartwright and Nancy Pelosi home for good.
Yeah, well, okay, so but that's remarkable news to me. So he's at 40% there. His whole narrative is he's this guy from Scranton, right? Like, so if his own people, right? Like, so the people that he claims to be of, right? Like, you know, by and for, that's what Biden says, right? Like, remember the whole narrative? You know, he's just a kid from Scranton who ended up in Washington and so on and so forth. Like, he's not, right? Like, and so the people there don't like him anymore because they're seeing the actual results and the policies play out. I mean, how embarrassing is that for Biden to be so low approval rating there in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre in this district?
Well, it's completely embarrassing, but it's completely expected. I mean, we have a lot of older folks here that are on Social Security, that are on a fixed income. Home heating oil prices are through the roof. You know, when I was a kid, I used to work on my dad's oil truck. He delivered home heating oil. That was our weekend business. We wake up at 4 a.m. and deliver heating oil. There are people that will be cold this winter because they can't afford fuel in Joe Biden and Matt Cartwright's America. There are senior citizens who will have a hard time putting food on the table because of inflation and runaway prices on meat in Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi's America. And you know what? Biden and Cartwright are very similar. You know, they claim to be Scranton guys, but these are guys that have made tens of millions of dollars while being in office. And that speaks to the corruption that's at the heart of the Democratic Party. I mean, both of those guys are now worth $20-30 million, and they've spent their adult lives in office. It's shameful. We have to end it. The people of Northeast Pennsylvania are demanding change. They're demanding a return to sanity. No more $450,000 payments to illegal immigrants. No more of this crazy critical race theory in our schools. No more of these mail-in ballots that you don't know where they came from. People want a return to sanity in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so Jim, what we're seeing play out in Washington D.C. right now, they are negotiating for the last several weeks, for the last several months, really. They've been negotiating out this multi-trillion-dollar package, which they say is a cradle to the grave, expansion of the social safety net, and so on and so forth. Okay, whatever. Though Biden tries to claim that it's bigger than the New Deal and the Great Society from FDR and LBJ combined. Okay, baloney, but regardless, it's basically a big mishmash, hodgepodge of leftist spending on all of these different priorities, like that they have, like climate and all this other nonsense. But and Biden's over there right now in Rome, hashing out all these meetings with all these world leaders, focused on all this nonsense. But here's the thing: the average person there in the state of Pennsylvania has got to be saying, you know, what's the deal? I mean, the gas price is we just had a caller call in who's a truck driver in Pennsylvania. He was saying it's $4.55 a gallon right now in Pennsylvania, gas prices on the turnpike, right? He drives up and down the turnpike. You know, the prices for food are going up. You mentioned the heating oil prices are going up. You've got people streaming across the border. They're talking about giving all these checks to those folks. You've got all these major crises that they're not focused on. Yet what is Matt Cartwright, Nancy Pelosi, and all these other radicals in Washington D.C. focused on? They're focused on how do we spend all this more trillions of dollars on all this leftist craziness. I can't think of a greater example of the disconnect than all of this, right? Like, these folks in Washington D.C. are so far out of touch with what regular people are focused on.
They're totally out of touch. I'll tell you what, they want to spend $5 trillion of new spending this year while we're in $30 trillion of debt. And as I said, they have to borrow that from the Chinese. Cartwright's like the incredible, invisible congressman. He never speaks up against it, and it's the Build Back Better BS. It's not only BS as we know it, it's also BS big socialism. I can't understand why these people think that socialism is going to make our country great again. I'm running on an America First agenda. I want to get the economy moving. I want to get our working class people up here. My family's in the construction business. We build things. We try to, grow the economy, and we're running into huge problems. We can't find people to hire. There's an employee shortage. We can't get supplies. This is all Joe Biden and Matt Cartwright's America. I mean, they've been in complete control, the liberals, for 10 months now. And this is what we get. We already see how bad it's getting, and it's only going to get worse. So we need to take back America. It's as simple as that. And it all comes down to, we don't have a presidential election for 3 more years, but we can take back the House next year. We can stop every single one of these crazy bills from ever becoming law if we can take back the House. And, it's fun watching the Democrats kill each other because they can't decide if they want the Bernie Sanders socialist $6 trillion approach or the $5 trillion Cartwright-Pelosi near-socialist approach. So we just have to stop it, Matt. We have to fight it. We can't become disheartened. We have to keep fighting to save America.
Right. So now, let me ask you this. Okay. So you mentioned you were up 10,000 votes on election night, and then the mail voting nonsense came in Pennsylvania. Are you concerned that stuff is going to happen again next year? Because we hear from our listeners all across the country. They always say, they're like, oh, well, if we don't get the voter fraud under control, if we don't get the election security under control, then this is all going to happen again. Have there been improvements? What's the state of play there on that front in the state of Pennsylvania? Do you think that, we'll turn it around this time, and that this time they won't get away with it?
Election security and election integrity are incredibly important. That's what a democracy, that's what a republic is founded on, fair elections. And I have vast concerns about the way they're being conducted in Pennsylvania. Governor Wolf put through this change in the law last year that did not go through the legislature, that I believe was unconstitutional, extending the time that these no-excuse mail-in ballots could come in days after the election. I took a court case up to the Supreme Court of the United States, Bognet versus Bookvar, trying to fight that. I've kept up constant pressure on our elected officials here. Cartwright's former district director was made the head of elections in Luzerne County this year. He screwed up the election in May. They had the Dominion voting machines, and all the Republican ballots said Democrat ballots on the top of them. So you had Republicans walking out. We hounded him. We went after him. Finally, we got him to resign 2 weeks ago. So I'm calling on every patriot, everyone, to not just complain, but go and do something about it. Get after your local election boards. Go and make sure that they're properly administrating the election. Get on your state legislators, especially in Pennsylvania, and tell them no more drop boxes, no more mail-in ballots that are open to fraud and abuse. Demand voter ID at the ballot box. You need a vaccine passport in some of these cities to go in and have dinner or see a show, but you don't need an ID for a mail-in ballot or to vote at the polls. That's crazy. We need election integrity, but I just want to say people should not become disheartened and say, I'm not going to vote. We should redouble our efforts to make sure that these people administer fair elections, audit voting practices where they've gone wrong, as they have in Pennsylvania, and demand that we return to a fair democracy, which is what our founders intended.
So it sounds like, though, you're making progress, though, because you got this guy, this Cartwright staffer guy who was running the board of elections there in Luzerne County, to resign, right? Like, so it sounds like you're making some progress here, right? Like, so there is hope on the horizon.
We are making progress. Mm-hmm. That was Luzerne County, my home county, but that took 6 months of effort. So we need people's help. Lackawanna County is a long-running. Some of the people that ran Lackawanna County 10 years ago are now in federal prison. It's had a lot of corruption. It's not fair to the citizens of Lackawanna County. So while we've made progress in Luzerne County, we have to keep up the pressure in Lackawanna County and some of these other counties. And man alive, we have to get rid of this no-excuse mail-in voting, which is open to fraud and abuse. I mean, we've seen incredible amounts of stories of ballots being received at houses where the people no longer live. So, we want fairness. I don't think that's too much to ask. We want fairness. We're going to keep fighting for it.
Right. And so now, kind of getting back to the picture of Cartwright. So Matt Cartwright presents himself as though he is a moderate, right? Like, so he walks around, he presents himself as though he is a moderate. You mentioned that he's voted 100% of the time with Nancy Pelosi. Can you put in context for us the Republicans are now 5 seats away. So I know that you guys got very close in Pennsylvania, and so did Parnell out in Western Pennsylvania, and several of these other seats. But Republicans did pick up a bunch of congressional districts around America last year. So that was the narrative we were talking about. We were talking about if Republicans could shock the world and retake the House last year, and they got really darn close to doing it, right? Like, and nobody thought that they were going to pull it off. Now Republicans are 5 seats away from a U.S. House majority. This district here in Pennsylvania's 8th congressional district is maybe one of, if not the top districts in the country to do that. There are other ones. There are other ones in Pennsylvania. There are other ones, like there's one up in Maine. There's the one down in Texas we had on last hour. Monica de la Cruz Hernandez, her opponent Vicente Gonzalez, just switched districts. So that one looks like very good. And there's a bunch of other ones around the country. We've been having folks on from different places. There's one in Wisconsin. Ron Conn behind is retiring. Can you put in context for us just how important Pennsylvania's 8th Congressional District is here to efforts to flip the U.S. House majority? If you win this seat, is Nancy Pelosi leaving? Is she done for real? She's in her 80s. This is her second stint as Speaker. So I'd imagine if they don't hold the majority, she's gone. She's Audi 5000, right? So you winning this congressional seat could flip the U.S. House majority. It could come down to Scranton, Pennsylvania. It could come down to this district.
Matt, I believe that PA8, this district, is the most important and most consequential in this election for a few reasons. Number one, it's Joe Biden's hometown, where he grew up his first few years before he left and never came back. So, number one, that would send a huge message. Number two, President Trump won this district with 52% of the vote. I got just under 50% of the vote here. We can take this district back. If we win this district, I believe we will be in the majority. It'll be one of the first one that's called election night, I believe and I hope, and that'll herald a new Republican majority. But number three, Pelosi is scared and frightened. She spent $1.5 million in this district attacking me, going after me, trying to disqualify me. Cartwright is a valued member of her leadership. They're two liberal peas in the same pod. So she is going to try to protect this guy. The only advantage he had over me last time was money. So if people can help out at bognetforcongress.com, Bognet, FOR, Congress.com, we are going to end that money advantage. We're going to make sure we can get our message out, and we're going to beat Cartwright. He votes with Pelosi on things that don't match the district. He was there for her $1,200 payments to illegal immigrants. He voted for it. Against the Born Alive Protection Act. He claims to be pro-life. He's pro-choice. He voted against the Born Alive Protection Act to protect little babies. It's shameful and disgusting. He always votes the liberal line, and that's why we have to beat him.
Right, and the last thing I would ask you here, Jim, is that, okay, so let's say hypothetically you guys pull it off. The House flips, the Republicans retake the majority. Why is that better for America? Like, make the case nationally for us. What is a Republican majority in the House going to be able to do that a Democrat majority isn't doing for the American people right now?
Well, I'll start with business, jobs, and taxes. If we get back the majority for Republicans, for conservatives, we will not vote to raise taxes. Joe Biden and Matt Cartwright right now are pushing for huge trillion-dollar tax increases. That's off the table with Republicans in charge. Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and Matt Cartwright are pushing for more and easier access to abortion. That will never happen with Republicans in power. If we take back the House, we will stop this assault on our energy industry. Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and Matt Cartwright are trying to get rid of fossil fuels. Here in northeastern Pennsylvania, we believe in oil. We believe in natural gas. We believe in coal. A Republican majority will stop that. And I'll just say, to me, one of the most important issues, immigration. They are trying to push through the most pro-illegal immigration agenda I've ever seen in my life. I will never, ever vote for one of those bills. I believe a Republican House will be able to stand up and stop the assault on our sovereignty and stop the assault on our border, and we have to do that to save America.
I couldn't agree more. Jim Bognet, running for Congress again in Pennsylvania's 8th Congressional District. Sir, where can people go to learn more about you and get involved if they so choose?
Website, bognetforcongress.com, FOR, Bognet for Congress. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Give us a follow, give us a like, give us $5. Help us save America.
All right, Jim Bognet, sir, really want to thank you for joining us again on Breitbart News Saturday. Look forward to having you back. This is a very, very important one out there, folks. Okay, guys, Breitbart News Saturday here on